is us again, Pauline and me, on Humanitarian Love. Hi, Pauline.
Hi, Asel. Hi, everybody. I apologize for the noise. It might be a bit noisy on my side. I hope it's okay.
Yes, I think it's important that you hear what we're saying. As long as you can hear, we'll be grateful. So, the topic that we wanted to talk about today is the topic of avoidance. And I think that's one of the things that happens to many of us, yet we don't really recognize that it's happening, that we're doing it, because it's so subtle and it's in ways that we may not have been expected. And the essential question is, what do we know about it, what to do about it, right? So that's what we want to talk about. So maybe we start with the first one of explaining to people what we mean by avoidance. And we also call that avoidance strategy because I think it's really like our minds create these strategies of how to avoid things that we don't like. So let's start with that. Defining, Pauline, how would you define um, avoidance?
Okay, so avoidance for me is can be different strategy, can be a set of strategies that are unconscious, but that are the aim is the same one is keeping love at arm's length. Is basically, yeah, staying safe unconsciously. This is what our primal brain is wired to do, is to differentiate what is dangerous and what is safe. So what we want is to survive. Our primal reptilian brain wants us to survive. And what in the past may look like a predator today look like many different situations. And when we talk about love and relationship, sometimes for some of us, for actually many of us, there is some danger associated with the idea of love. And so avoidance, keeping love at distance, is one strategy that can take different shapes, but basically that's avoidance for me.
Mhm. Yeah, for me, I think avoidance is avoiding being hurt, essentially.
Yes.
And whatever we think, whether maybe we've suffered in the past from it, or maybe we have never done it. So we're basically saying, too scared of being hurt or being rejected or whatever the thing that we feel that will happen if we go for it. So that's why we don't do that and keep avoiding, right? So the other, I think the classic example that in life that we know of is if if we touch something hot and we see that this is not something good for us, so we don't do that anymore. And it's the same with feelings as well, that we feel like if we go for it, we may get hurt, so we don't want to do that, so we rather stay away from it. So we know that I think many of us somehow understand this, I believe, but what maybe is difficult for people to understand or grasp it is why we do it. Like you explained a bit, as to why we do it, like to stay alive and to survive, and that's something that we all automatically do it. So then it becomes a question of, is it really possible not to avoid it, or is it, like it's a human thing not to avoid it? Are we really talking about something very abstract, or it's really possible not to avoid it, or how to go around it, right? Pauline, you want to speak to that a bit?
Yeah, well, I would like to give a little bit of background because it's great that you mentioned that um, we can be maybe a bit more aware of it if we were hurt or felt
Mhm.
rejected or felt abandoned or like all these different negative experience as adults, and this can make more sense for us. But for many of us, the fear we have around love, around intimacy, around being close to someone, actually, for many of us, for most of us, it comes from when we're much younger. And so this is
Mhm.
why it is, for most part, unconscious. So I wanted to explain briefly the theory of attachments, the attachment theory, without going too much into the details, but just explain that um, the idea is like how we attach to our parents or caretakers
Mhm.
before we were 18-month old. So when we're a baby, pre-verbal and when our brain and nervous system are not fully formed, we are completely dependent, right? We are depending for our survival, for our real survival, on the people who are supposed to love us the most, our parents or caretakers. And if at some point our parents or caretakers are not able to meet our needs, are not meeting our needs, or we perceive they are not meeting our needs, physical or emotional needs, they can be some breach in our brain, in our nervous system that, ooh, being close to someone is dangerous. And
Mm.
so this is really important because it affects, if we look at, I'm going to talk about the avoidance attachment style that is about 25-30% of people. So it's a lot. So I would say more than half of the people that don't have a secure attachment. Secure meaning we feel safe to attach to someone, we feel safe to attach to our parents, so then we feel safe to attach in our romantic relationships.
Mm.
And so this is a very important theory that can help understand how we behave in our relationship. So without going too much into the details, the key word is how you attached as a kid to your parents or caretaker and how your needs were met or not can have a very big influence on how you relate in your romantic relationships.
Mm.
And in this theory, there's different styles of relationship, and some people turn out to be have a secure attachments, meaning they are comfortable both with intimacy, with being close to someone. It is not that scary, but they're also comfortable with independence, with being away from their beloved. It's like it's okay. And then there is other people who are more insecure in relationships. And in this group of more insecure in relationship, there's the more anxious attachments,
Mm.
and then there's a more avoidance. So this is two ends of a spectrum, but the cause is the same thing. Is that probably as children, there was some insecurity around being close to someone that is being brought up as in the adulthood in romantic relationships. Um, and I can go on. I don't know if you want me to go and explain a little bit more the attachment of avoidance, because I think I want to make the connection with the humanitarian world and how maybe
Mm.
this style can be more represented, can be more
Mm.
seen in the humanitarian world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe, Pauline, we need to speak to. I know that we tend to explain a lot with the childhood of why we do things the way we do or don't do things the way we don't because childhood had certain influence on us. And I love that we can explain things as to why we behave, but maybe at the same time that gives us a bit of a feeling of okay then it's lost, right? Like okay, the childhood, I mean, I had the worst childhood, like I could tell you all about it, for instance, right? And then say like okay, that means that I can't be helped. And I think we need to speak to that category of people that that's not the case. Just because we can explain things with how things might have been in the childhood does not mean that you can continue using the strategy. So how would you speak to that?
Very good points. For me, understanding what comes from childhood is very important because it can help you understand yourself and then understand partners or also. So I take it really more as a reading grid,
Mm,
more than okay, this is diagnosis, this is life sentence, and you have this for life. You're like insecure, you're anxious, attached, and that's it. No, it's really more a reading grid of like, oh, okay, it makes sense that I have those thoughts or I have these behaviors in relationship. It makes sense.
yeah.
But the second point, beside understanding and self-compassion, which is like so important, is it can be reversed. It is not because you've been wired um, in this way that you cannot change. And this is the power of coaching, the power of therapy, is that once you understand yourself, you can start changing towards what you want.
Hmm. Amazing. So let's go to that part of changing what we want and how we want to change that is to really maybe give people the of what um, consequences of that avoidance is now so that they know that if they don't want that consequence, basically, they could do something about it, right? Because I think oftentimes, if we're not aware of what it's bringing to us, we may not really want to do anything about it because a lot of the things from, like you said, unconsciously that we are not even aware this is how we're doing. So, what would you say avoidance shows up in people's current lives if they keep avoiding? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I think it's important to know how to recognize this
Yeah.
strategy of avoidance. So, and this is where you're going to see how it can relate to the humanitarian sector. So, one of the key things of avoidance attachment side people is idealizing independence, freedom,
Mm,
self-sufficiency, being very independent with sometimes looking down on dependency, seeing it as a weakness. So that's number
mm,
one, the prioritization of independence. Number two is not prioritizing love life. Clearly, that's also something that we can find in the humanitarian world. And in general, this shows up as uh, yeah, which kind of relationship do you prioritize? Are you more into casual relationship? Are you looking for something serious? Do you feel like you're ready to commit? So look at what is your relationship to commitment, and in your relationships also look how when you get stressed, when you get triggered. So typically avoidant people, I say to the short avoidant people, you're not avoidant, you have maybe a predominant avoidant attachment style, but to make it shorter I would call it this way. So maybe you feel stress when your partner wants to connect, wants to come close to you. You feel like, ooh, there's something there. um, when your partner has a big need, has like going through emotions, maybe cries, needs you, you feel like, whoa, this is a big turn off. Like I want to run away, and or it's hard for you to handle conflicts, right? You want to avoid it, to shut down. Other strategies that are in the spectrum avoidance is fantasizing on your ex. Oh, my ex was so perfect, or the one. Well, I know this one too much imperfection. This one, no, I see his flaws. No, I really want one that will be, ideal, perfect. So that's a way to keep distance with the real person who is in front of you. Uh,
mm,
yeah, and then you can. I know people who are in long-term relationship, but who still have this avoidance strategy, and they do a lot of things on their own. Maybe they keep flirting with other people, so that in their mind they're like still single.
mm,
Avoiding physical closeness. Um, when you are in a relationship, you're not sure that you want to be in a relationship anymore. So there's
yeah.
this how can you say this uncertainty about wanting to be in a relationship and about your ability to be in a relationship. If you're like, this is not for me, I don't feel like 100%. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is the profile and the different way avoidance shows up in relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe the other things that I could also think of is like distracting yourself a lot. I think you said it in maybe different ways. So the way that it showed up for me a lot was the distracting of, oh, I need to be doing something else. I need to be in all the action mode because I don't want to be feeling something, right? Whatever it is that we could be feeling, instead we want to distract ourselves. And that way could be looking like overworking a lot. Um, Partying a lot, or I don't know, flirting a lot, or whatever the a lot that you may do that keeps you from feeling whatever. And the other one I think is the classic example that you touched upon maybe in some ways is the not committing to anything. And that could also show up in so many different ways. In other words, we say things like, well, I will just see what happens. A bit like, I don't want to be get hurt, so I keep my distance, but I will see where it brings to, and then we don't really commit to it again, and we just see what happens, and then we get every time a confirmation of, oh, this doesn't work, or this doesn't work. There's no, yeah, this is how I think it shows up. And the last one maybe that my client was recently mentioning, of telling ourselves that there is no person who is for me. Like there is like lots of explanations of how there is no person for me. And therefore we believe that to be true, and therefore we don't really even go for relationships because we explain in advance why things won't work. So therefore it's not worth doing it anything. So, yeah, so having said that, the consequences or the way that you recognize what's happening for you or in your life, then the question becomes, if you don't want to keep having that consequences that Pauline mentioned, that I mentioned, then the question becomes what you can do as of now currently, what would you say, Pauline? What can be done about all the things avoiding?
Okay, so may I say one thing before jumping
Yeah.
into the solution? Is just because we're talking to a humanitarian aid worker audience mostly, that to see that I don't have an answer to that, but this is an open question. Like, is it because we work in the humanitarian sector that we value independence, that we work so much, that we create this space between us and relationship, and for some of us, not all of us?
Mm,
Or is it because there is this unconscious long-term fear around love and intimacy, that we go into this job? Cannot be the only motivation, of course, but I think it's
yeah.
an interesting topic that there is no, I didn't find any research on that, but how the sector in which we work on, that values very much independency, shutting down our needs, not being very connected to our emotions, like the profile, if we make a caricature, of how we have to be in the humanitarian sector,
Yeah.
looks a lot like the profile of being avoidant in relationships. So I think it's interesting to look at that if you are working in this sector of, like, okay, taking a look at your love life and relationship, and if you're struggling with, like, seeing, um, and then yes, maybe we look at the solution now of what can be done. And after I said that, so first thing for me is awareness, raising the awareness around your actions, your behavior, and your thoughts in relationship. Noticing, looking for those points that we mentioned. Do you look down on dependency? Do you see depending on somebody else and having somebody else depending on you as a weakness, as something like, ooh, weak and dangerous, and ooh, I'm somehow disgusted by it? Um, um, how are you triggered in relationship? Is it when people come close to you? Is it, do you tend to focus on small imperfections? So looking at the list that we made earlier and seeing if you recognize yourself in that, and then having awareness, like what triggers you in the behavior of your partner. And then when you get triggers, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking of? Do you tend to fantasize on your ex, or in the one, or in the impossible relationship? Like, start investigating, your thoughts about this. Like, could I be avoidant? Like, what would be my strategy to keep love at a certain distance? And then, if you recognize yourself in these portraits, and something that is important is that it is not fixed, it is not determined. You can be a blend of different attachment style. Now, we didn't go into the full conversation about attachment style, but it's just like a reading grid. Okay, yes, maybe I recognize there's some avoidance in me, in my thoughts, in my behavior, and as a result, some impact in relationship. So start having awareness, number one. Number two, start changing some of the narrative. If you have a narrative around the one, um, the idealized ones, maybe start giving people around you a chance. Start focusing on the imperfection. It's really about learning to tolerate love, tolerate relationships that are imperfect with imperfect human beings. Um, Maybe look for somebody who feels secure, who feels comfortable with intimacy, because there's often, maybe now is not the time to go into that, but there's often an attraction between people who are more on the avoidance side, who wants to stay on their own, and people on the other side of the spectrum that is more anxious, who think a lot about love, who want to be very close to the person, who tend to feel not
Mm,
worthy. So these two characters, two personalities, tend to attract each other. So ideally, if you're starting fresh, start to look with somebody who feels like comfortable with intimacy, with being close, and yes, so choosing a more secure partner, growing around awareness around your thoughts and behavior that could be avoidance strategy. Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, learning to communicate, of course, more and more what you're feeling, getting in touch with your own needs and meeting your own needs. So that's a whole journey on its own, um, because this is usually something that maybe you were not you didn't grow up doing, like that your parents maybe didn't take care of your needs on a regular and constant way. So giving yourself this again and starting to value your needs, and so
Yeah.
to start being comfortable with also taking care of your partner needs over time, but starting with yourself.
Yeah, amazing. So one of the things that I forgot to mention, as you were saying about why we go to humanitarian field, right? Is it because we're trying to avoid something? And this is, I think, could be another topic that we could talk about. But one of the things that I realize as well is that whenever we're avoiding being hurt, we are signing up for a long-term suffering. And this is at least my experience that I remember of. And the way that I see it is that whenever we, for instance, say that we cannot be attached to something, like we cannot be feeling this because we need to avoid it, we attach ourselves, we create the dependence with something else. Ironically, like in the case of humanitarians, we then tend to attach ourselves to our work so much that we let our work to identify and to, be in all somehow, and then we tend to then see that world as something where we believe we can be independent, we can do all the things, but maybe some of the ways we're actually attaching ourselves to work so much so that we don't really create the freedom to experience love, right? So this is, I think, something to be aware of as well, that if we are believing that work provides everything that we need, or we can, I don't know, fulfill ourselves, realize ourselves in the work, and we don't need anything else, that could also be an indication of trying to avoid feeling vulnerable and feeling love. um, yeah, something to watch out for. So in terms of solutions, I think, Pauline, you covered a lot. So maybe some of the things that I would say that is helpful for me is to really look at around the beliefs of why you believe that you can't be hurt. Because we really think that avoiding is better, easier, and therefore it's a preferred choice than being hurt. And therefore we don't want to, experience feeling hurt. But if we believe that we cannot handle feeling hurt, then of course we will never go for it. The the easiest solution for me is feeling hurt or being hurt. And as much as our brains will not want to do that, this is actually something that we can do easily. We can process those emotions and we can go through that faster than keep avoiding at any cost and trying to suppress whatever the desires we have around intimacy and relationships, right? Because those are the feelings that are difficult to suppress, or there are desires are difficult to keep avoiding it, because we will encounter so many different occasions where we don't know how to handle, and therefore we need to go for this distraction that I was talking about. So that's why if you want to choose the easier road, um, even though your brain will probably say it's not easy, because as Pauline was saying, our primal brain wants to keep us alive. So her being hurt is a dangerous, bad thing according to our primal brain. But despite of that, knowing that you can handle being hurt and going through it can help you not only going through it, but help you trust yourself that you can do this, and help you also build that muscle for you can handle it, instead of keep finding different ways to go around it, which may not really work, because going around it means that we will always try to avoid that love that we're actually wanting, right? So that's why look at the stories, like Pauline was saying, around why you believe that you can't do this, why you believe that you need to avoid it, why you believe that you rather spend your time on being independent and doing other things than being intimate in a relationship, right? So whatever that story that you're telling yourself, you can also challenge it and see if you want to change that story. And the more you realize you can be you can, experience being hurt and going to the other side, the more strong you will feel. And the more you will realize, I can do this. I thought I wouldn't be able to survive it, but I was, and I can now be even stronger to explore new relationships that I will not be afraid of failing again because I know how to handle that as well. So that's why I think the the analogy maybe that might be helpful for you to think about is like if you are having flu. I know that many of us tend to grab the medicine and then get over with, and then like feeling like, okay, now we're going to go and do all of our things. But we also know that by taking the medicine we are destroying a lot of the coping mechanisms within ourselves, the immune system that needs to fight this whatever is going on, right? So that's why avoidance for me is like taking a medicine and hoping for a quick fix, which we know is maybe a quick fix in the short term, but actually more damaging in the long term, right? So that's why if you don't want to do that, experience feeling hurt. I know it's going to suck, but also it's going to give you the feeling that you can do it. And if you can do that, then you can do many more things and explore new relationships. Anything, Pauline, to that matter?
Just to go in the same direction, I like really your analogy of being sick and having a discomfort in your body, a physical discomfort, is the
Yeah,
same that happens when you are being triggered in relationship, whether you're dating or in relationship. Today we're talking about avoidance, so we're talking about more being uncomfortable with somebody being close to you or you being close to someone. So yes, the work is really to tolerate the discomfort, to start growing awareness. We talk about the thoughts, but it's also happening a lot in the body. But like, ooh,
yeah,
I don't feel great, I feel tension, I feel there's something happening in my body or in my emotions when my partner is coming close or when my date is coming close, and I don't like that. So it's about tolerating this so that you're able to differentiate what is just your old wound, your old fear that is coming from a long time and you want to heal, or it's really a deal breaker. It's really like
yeah,
something that you don't want. And I think those two are it's really crucial, yeah, to differentiate this subtlety. And there's some work that you can do by yourself, and all the little ideas that we give into these talks about inquiry of your thoughts and your behavior is great. But if you want to do really deep work, I believe that coaching can also help you to develop this safety in your body, this comfort in your body, no matter what happens, so that you can recognize, ooh, I'm feeling triggered, this is what's happening. And then, okay, how do I move out of it? How do I
yeah,
how do I relax over and over again so I can feel safe, even if there is some hints of trigger. So that's,
yeah,
yes, that's, I really want to leave, maybe the last thing I would like to leave the audience with is the idea that it's totally possible to change, that even if we were not raised, or if in a secure attachment style, or even if we were hurt in in later relationship, we can always heal it, we can always change it. It is not forever. So yes.
yes. I love that. And I love that idea of we can always influence the outcome that we're wanting, even if creating new relationships. And we can always do that by feeling whatever is happening within our bodies, by healing, like Pauline was saying, and also looking at what are the stories we're telling ourselves around it. And if the story is, I can't do this anymore, we want really to encourage you to look at how you could do it again, but this time maybe learning the lessons of the past, but also knowing that you can actually create whatever the desirable love relationship you're wanting. Just give yourself a chance to do that instead of dismissing it and explaining things away as to why it won't work. Because you can always find explanations for why it won't work, but finding explanation as to how you will make it work could be a very powerful place to be in. And we would love for you to be in that place. Okay. Thank you so much, Pauline. It was great talking to you as usual on these topics. So stay tuned on the different topics that we will bring up And if you want to bring up your topics as well, so let us know. Or if you want to be coached on this or any other topics that we're covering, so you're welcome to let us know as well. So until then, stay safe and start opening yourself up to love relationships. Thank you. Bye.